well, we don't actually, don't we? They're not on site, are they? Eric Dillner and
Correct. Right.
Okay.
We're not. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we really just do we have the McGuires, the Cohens, and everybody with us? Jackson and Lindsay?
Yes, our plan was to move them over as the principal started, but we can move over now if you like.
I just want to make sure that they're here, so when we start, everything's smooth.
Yeah, Wendy, could you move over the students and their families?
Sure.
Thank
Give me
you.
just a second.
All right. So, Wendy, whenever you give the word, we can start the red light, start the meeting.
The McGuires aren't there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure. Oh, there he is. We have quite a few attendees, so I have a long list to go through
Okay.
to make sure that everyone is on. So let me see. So let's see, we have Georgia, we have Jackson, we have William McGuire. Let's see, I don't see Lindsay Reardon. Maybe if Lindsay or her family are signed in, you could just raise your hand for me, and maybe you just did. Okay, I'm going to assume that's her. And I think we are all set.
Oh, good. Well, good. I wish you were here, but next best thing is seeing you all here so we can celebrate your, achievements. All right. Thank you, everyone. It is 7:35, and I would like to call this meeting of the Madison Public School Board of Education to order. Could we please rise and state the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Cook.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Colley. It's great to see so many people with us tonight. I will keep my report very brief and get right to the student awards in our presentation. Just want to share again with the Madison community that we continue to do very well in our efforts to get out of the COVID pandemic, and we have not had an active case in our schools in several weeks, and so we're just really pleased with how things are going and allowing us to do our year-end events. This is one event I really do wish was in person. Each year, Connecticut Boards of Education get to recognize Connecticut high school and middle school students who exhibit exemplary leadership skills. It's called the CABE Student Leadership Awards, and we bring our middle school and high school principal with us tonight to share some information about their students, and just really excited. I know it's difficult for them to make these selections because so many of our students exhibit such great leadership, but these 4 students have really stood out, and I think the board's going to be really impressed by what you hear. So I will start with our middle school principal, Catherine Hart, and have her speak to her 2 students.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. This evening, I have the great pleasure of being here with Chris Paris, who is the 8th grade counselor. And the first student that I would like to recognize is Georgia Cohen, who is sitting here with her parents this evening. And Georgia has been nominated for the Connecticut Association of Board of Education Student Leadership Award for 2021. Georgia is hardworking, diligent, and caring. Those are just a few of the comments made by the Paulson community when referring to Georgia, a young lady who is well respected by staff and students. Georgia is an exceptional student and a person of outstanding character. Throughout middle school, she has maintained A's in all of her classes, even while taking advanced math classes. Georgia is a leader inside and outside of the classroom. Georgia is an accomplished athlete, as she is a goalie on her lacrosse team and on a rock climbing team that practice 3 times a week. During the winter months, she likes to ski, her favorite mountain being Smuggler's Notch. Georgia likes to challenge herself by setting goals either on the slopes or while rock climbing so that she can always improve her craft. Outside of athletics, Georgia loves to read. Some of her favorite books are Clap When You Land and Becoming by Michelle Obama. Georgia's positive qualities extend beyond the school day, as she was a participant in Mentoring Matters while at Brown School, a member of Student Council at Paulson, and is a Girl Scout. When Georgia gets older, she would like to be an architect or a geneticist. I'm confident that Georgia will be successful in whatever she chooses. Georgia is a fabulous young lady, and we are very proud of her commitment and dedication. Paulson Middle School is very fortunate to have someone like Georgia Cohen as part of our community. Congratulations, Georgia. You can't hear everybody clapping for you, but they certainly are. And would you like to say a couple of words back?
Yes. I want to thank the Board of Education and all of my teachers, and especially my family. And it's such an honor to receive this award and to be a part of this community.
Thank you, Georgia. Great job. We're very proud of you, and I can't wait to see and hear what you'll do in the future.
Congratulations.
I'd also like, sorry. Okay. I would also like to introduce to you Will McGuire, who I can see sitting with his mom tonight. Leaders at the middle school show their qualities in a variety of ways. For those who stand out, they can be counted on, and peers look to them as role models in tough situations and to be there in times of need. Will McGuire exemplifies what it means to be a leader. You can count on him to do the right thing. Will is described by his teachers as a mature, responsible, generous, and humble young man. It is no surprise that Will is a recipient of the CABE Leadership Award. Through his time at Paulson, Will has also earned A's in all of his classes, even while taking advanced math classes. In addition to his exemplary performance academically, Will is also an accomplished athlete who plays on travel teams for soccer and recreational basketball. He also spends some of his free time officiating young soccer games for youth. Some of Will's hobbies outside of sports are rock climbing, hiking, and fishing. He has a sense of adventure and enjoys challenges, which makes perfect sense as to why his favorite book is Into the Wild. He's captured by the idea of being out in an unknown area and finding food, shelter, and trying to live through the art of survival. Will cares about others, as evident in his participation in our Peer Helper program for 3 years. As a 6th grader, Will was a member of Peer Allies. Now he is a member of Peer Helpers and is an ally leader. Will assisted in the planning of the Teacher Appreciation Hearts that are proudly displayed at Paulson and now downtown, along with painting positive messages on rocks and also downtown in Madison last year. Will is an incredible young man, and we're very proud of his accomplishments within and beyond the classroom. I'm very excited to see what his future holds. Congratulations, Will.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Hart and the Board of Ed. I really appreciate this honor. It's very kind of you. And I also want to thank my parents who just helped me out so much and really put put me where I am today.
Congratulations, Will. It's very well deserved.
Thank you, Principal Hart. And it sounds like the Hart family dog was also excited for our middle school students. So that's
Sorry about that.
that's okay. That's great. I was glad to hear it. And I know someone who's very excited, Mr. Solitari, has just heard about 2 8th graders coming your way next year. So I'm the future is very bright for Daniel Hand. So with that said, I'll turn it over to TJ Solitari to share with us our high school recipients.
Thank you, Dr. Cook, and thank you to the Board of Ed for the invitation this evening. And good segue, I'd like to just say congratulations to Georgia and Will on being selected for, a very honorable award, and certainly looking forward to seeing you in just a few months, not in a year or anything, in a few months. So enjoy the last couple of weeks of middle school, and then we'll get ready for a big transition. I would like to welcome Lindsay Reardon and Jackson Kuja this evening, and excited again. In person is always better, but this is certainly close. And I will say it's really challenging to capture, a really clear picture of all the strengths of Lindsay and Jackson just in a couple of pages. So I'm going to try and do my best. Lindsay, you're going to be first. I can tell you're excited to go. And Mrs. Reardon, thank you for joining your daughter and joining us this evening. So diligent, persistent, motivated, hardworking, and kind-natured are just a few of the wonderful traits that Lindsay Reardon possesses. Throughout her high school career, Lindsay has found the perfect balance between her challenging course load while finding time to compete on the DHHS varsity girls tennis team, as well as being a member of a private tennis team. In addition to being a highly successful student athlete, Lindsay has committed numerous hours to many important community service activities. Academically, Lindsay has been a very dependable student who has earned impressive grades throughout her high school experience. One of her teachers shared the following about her. She was well organized, was an active participant in class, and she produced excellent quality of work and effort. Another teacher viewed Lindsay as a conscientious and diligent student who is a sincere pleasure to have in class. Lindsay's academic confidence has increased over her years in high school, and this confidence allows her to challenge herself when taking many high-level courses offered at our school. Lindsay's clear commitment to her academics while balancing her commitments in athletics have resulted in a wonderful level of success. This success is a direct result of her setting attainable goals, working hard, and possessing a never-ending commitment to everything she does. Lindsay is an outstanding young woman who will continue to nourish her passion of learning. Lindsay's an incredibly kind, down-to-earth, respectful young lady who will no doubt continue to add to her list of personal and academic accomplishments after high school. Teachers love having Lindsay in their classes. They have shared that they believe that she will continue to grow exponentially from the first day of class to the last. This growth is directly attributable to her willingness to learn from her errors, to ask questions, to push herself and take risks, and to an obvious commitment to studying and understanding what she is learning. While she is a capable, independent learner, she works just as effectively and efficiently in groups with her peers. Young people like Lindsay are a rare find. She has quietly become a leading force in the classroom by just being herself and learning to balance her humble nature with her drive and ambition to succeed. Lindsay is an absolute delight of a person. The world needs more people like her who are kind, compassionate, friendly, open-minded, accepting, and sincere. She understands herself well and has a maturity that many peers of the same age do not yet possess. There always seems to be a bright, happy light that shines within her. I know that whatever the setting, she will always present the best side of herself and people will want to be around her. She is most certainly deserving of this special recognition. Congratulations, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for nominating me to my teachers and the Board of Ed. It's such a big honor, and I'm very grateful to receive an award like this.
Congratulations again, Lindsay, and hopefully you enjoy the golf clap that you're hearing. Jackson, you ready? All right, Jackson Kuja entered high school with lofty academic goals and personally challenged himself to achieve them. A review of his transcript will clearly confirm that he challenged himself by taking many of our most rigorous courses over the past 4 years. Due to his strong analytical skills, preparation for course requirements, and a highly organized approach, not surprisingly, Jackson has earned incredible grades in all courses. His work ethic is impressive, as is his relentless approach to his studies. Worth noting is the fact that Jackson is willing and determined to take on the challenges of some of our highest level courses with a full understanding of the impact these decisions will have on an already demanding workload. Jackson should be commended for his commitment to academics as well as his determination to succeed. In addition to his impressive academic success, Jackson is a very well-rounded young adult. Many would agree that he's a man in constant motion, both in and out of the school community. Although unusual for many adolescents, Jackson's ability to be empathetic is noteworthy. He capitalizes on this character trait and focuses his efforts to improve the lives of those around him. His resume details positive involvement in many organizations and clubs. Some of these include a 4-year membership on a DHHS baseball team and marching band, a peer advocate, a member of our stock market club, and he's the founder of our business club that produced a YouTube video focusing on personal finance. Most notably, Jackson was nominated by the DHHS faculty to participate in the American Legion Boys State program. Due to the pandemic, unfortunately, this program was canceled last year. Jackson entered Daniel Hand as a somewhat quiet freshman. By junior year, he emerged as a charismatic and caring individual, highly capable of leading others to make a difference in the world. In an unassuming approach, he uses humor and confidence to draw others to him. He recognizes hardship and injustice in the world, and it affects him deeply. Jackson has a strong moral compass and is considered a role model for his peers. A faculty member shared the following: Jackson is one of the hardest working, self-motivated students that I have met. He sets high standards and does his best to attain them. He doesn't do things for attention or gratification. More importantly, he takes the time to stop and enjoy the various experiences and the people around his daily life. Jackson is an engaging leader who I'm confident will continue to have a positive impact on those around him. His ability to relate well with people of all ages is evident and appreciated. He is truly a special young adult who is well deserving of this special recognition. Congratulations, Jackson.
Thank you for the very kind words, Mr. Salutary, and thank you to the board as a whole for the time.
Congratulations again, Jackson.
Yeah, I have to say that one of the very best things about being on this board is a chance to meet and see you like Jackson and Lindsay and William and Georgia. I mean, it's, you know, a chance to recognize your achievements and celebrate everything along with your family because they made it all possible. So you really, way to go, guys. That's just tremendous.
Galen, you couldn't have said it better. And I think for the parents, I just want to say your kids are a reflection of you and all the love and support that you've given them over their education and their careers. And we're grateful. I totally agree, Galen. This is, you know, these are the moments that are the best time to be a board member. And so we're grateful to everybody for coming tonight and for sharing your children with us. It's so exciting.
Keep serving aces, Lindsay. All right.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Salutary and Ms. Hart for a wonderful presentation. Those are some powerful adjectives you used tonight and really reflective of our students. Thank you, our families. And thank you, students. We're expecting big things, you know, of you from now on. So this is an important award and congratulations. And look forward to sharing that with you in the future. We usually now would be presenting that award to you. We will provide that to the school, and they will provide that to you. And your name will appear on the CABE website. I believe it's already up there in terms of the award throughout Connecticut, students who have been recognized. So again, congratulations on behalf of the board and on behalf of the Madison Public Schools. And you are more than welcome to stay. We will move you over to the other room, and we hope you'll stay for our presentation tonight, which I will move to it at this point. I'll turn it back to Chairman Kelly.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Cook. And thanks again, everyone. Welcome everyone tonight to our public workshop, where I'd like to reintroduce the topic of our school renewal plan. It's been a little over a year, and we're emerging from COVID. Things feel like they're returning to normal, and it feels like the right time to retrieve our facilities project from like a state of suspended animation. It's almost cryogenically preserved with some modifications. So, if we peer back into the mists of time, way back in 2014, when the town first began to study this issue, you'll remember that there were really three primary concerns that the town had about our schools. And they were how to deal with aging facilities, a mismatched learning environment for our children, and then finally, the fact of declining enrollment. So that was then, this is now, and 7 years later, we need to ask what has changed. Well, the educational needs, I think, still remain the same. And we have tremendous staff, tremendous teachers, but the buildings have gotten older and things are getting more expensive. In terms of what's different, enrollment is projected to reach a trough soon and then begin to climb thereafter. So all in all, before I introduce Dr. Cook, I'd just like to say that I'm excited for the opportunity that we have as a board and for the town to make a difference and help improve our town. And with that, I can think of no better person to lead the way than Dr. Cook. So please take it from there.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly, and thank you, Board of Ed and our audience tonight for the opportunity to present where we are right now with the school building project. It was a project that, as Galen said, considerable work had gone into pre-pandemic, and we are picking it up right where we left off with, I think, some even better pieces involved going forward. And so very excited. I have a team with me here tonight that will help answer some questions when we get to that point. For the audience sake, as you hear our presentation, please feel free to jot down some questions. We will have a question and answer period. And unlike a regular board meeting, you'll have the opportunity to receive an answer. I guarantee we'll be able to answer everything that you ask or every piece, but we will make sure we get that back to you if we are unable to answer. But unlike a regular board meeting, you will have the opportunity to have dialogue tonight in terms of your question and receive an answer. Our school facilities director is with us tonight, Bill McMinn, and Charles Warrington from Colliers, who is someone I meet with weekly on our project and is really an expert in the school construction field and is just a tremendous add. And very grateful that our first select woman, Peggy Lyons, is able to join us tonight. We have invited Peggy. She's been very supportive of the project and very helpful in terms of my entrance into Madison and supportive and give me a good, kind of lay of the land and sharing with me some history of the town. So very thankful for that. With that said, I am going to start the presentation and share my screen. There we go. How does that look? Chairman Cowley, is that in presentation mode? Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. So as we said, we're excited to be here tonight on May 25th. We will have other public forums, and those will be very likely in person, which we look very much forward to. Okay, so just a quick agenda of what we plan to share tonight. We want to share the work to date on our potential building project. We want to, as I shared, have public participation. And this is not the only time you'll have a chance to ask questions. We will have future opportunities as well. We did receive a few questions ahead of time that if they are not re-asked, we will have Zoe Roos, our public communications person, share with us. And then also after the presentation, the Board of Ed has plans to discuss on potential referendum dates. So what is the referendum that we're considering? What would it do? So the first thing it would do is build a new pre-K to 5 school. Very exciting. We'll share the details of that coming up. It would create a new K to 5 school in Brown, because Brown becomes a K to 5 school from its current, location as a 4 to 5 school. Polson would receive updates on HVAC and auditorium improvements, as well as some other improvements throughout the building. So we really do impact the district pre-K to 8. And it would close as school buildings Ryerson, Jeffrey, and Town Campus Learning Center, which is our pre-K center, which is portables over here at the Town Campus Center. In terms of the new pre-K to 5 school, so it would be a very energy efficient building. We have had discussions on whether it would be net zero, but regardless whether it's ends up being a net zero project or just a very energy efficient building, it would be significantly improvement over older buildings. It would have a full-size gym for an elementary school, 6,000 square feet. We know how important that is for Madison, and to opportunity to bring on another gym to be utilized for community events would be very important to us. It would have 100% air conditioning, meet Connecticut high performance building standards, house 600 plus students, 82,000 plus or minus square feet. We're still working on the exact measurements of that, but that is pretty well defined. Would meet new school security infrastructure standards, and as I mentioned, replace 20-year-old TCLC portables as part of that process. Brown becomes a K to 5 building. So one concern or question I have heard is, so part of the town would receive a new building, and part of the town would go to a building that's currently in place, and that is true, but there are many positives to Brown that currently exist and would exist into the future that wouldn't be part of a new school building. And so we feel that both buildings would provide a very efficient, effective school learning spaces, have high quality Madison educators in them, and would really bring kind of some different different benefits to the equation. So what we would do over time would convert 5 classrooms to 4 kindergarten classrooms. So kindergarten classrooms are larger classrooms, and so we'd be preparing our first 4 classrooms to house kindergarten students. There'd be bathroom and ADA upgrades throughout, security upgrades, furniture renewal, including the school library, and bringing on an outdoor classroom. And so one of the things we've learned and utilized during COVID times is our outside spaces, to much more frequency during the school day for instructional uses, for lunch. And so we've received some really great feedback from our families about that, and really excited about the potential to bring on an outdoor classroom officially at Brown. Currently, what Brown has that most elementary schools would not, because it was a former middle school, is a full-size gym for a middle school. So it's bigger than the 6,000 square foot gym that the elementary school would have. It has an auditorium, again, not typical and not something that the state of Connecticut supports in a new build for an elementary school. It would have 100% AC except for the gym and the locker room. A large updated outdoor play area, which was recently done, which is absolutely beautiful, and then a larger library, again, something that was suitable for a middle school, but would be really in place for an elementary school. So we're really accentuating the positives that are currently in place at Brown. So what happens at Polson? So as a 1960s building, there is significant electrical renovation needed. Something needed regardless of whether we go through a referendum or not. We'd upgrade the ventilation system and basically completely replace it, expand air conditioning from the current 50% of the school to a full school air conditioning, and then the auditorium upgrades and improvement. And it's not air conditioned now, but what we're really excited about for the potential there is to have an auditorium that will get utilized more for community events, for school district events. And so the upgrades are needed there and really move us forward as a full town. So the discussion tonight that the board will have, a final decision is not to be made tonight, but the discussion of the benefits of a December or a February or even potentially a March referendum. Both dates would have an opening of the new school on September or the start of the school year for 2025. So each date gives us the potential for that. Obviously, December would give us a little bit more time to be ready, but we feel both would put us on track for that opening in 2025. So one of the things that the board has spent a considerable amount of time on, the administration, is looking at two potential sites for the new school. And so site one is in the front of Polson. It would be where athletic fields are right now. And site two is a site that is a potential purchase for the town. And I'll go over in a separate slide the benefits and concerns of both. As you can imagine, there's always pluses and minuses to any decision the Board of Ed and Town of Selectmen and Town Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen would make. So site one. So the benefits, it is currently owned by the town. It definitely would create a campus feel for Polson in hand, as three schools would be on as they are now, very close to each other, but it would be in this orange outlined area right now. Concerns are is that currently softball and field hockey do play there. It would impact two softball fields and a field hockey field, and then those fields, even when they're not used for field hockey, are pretty extensively used. They would be taken offline for at least 2 years, but potentially up to 4 years, as the plan is that those fields would move to the current site of the Jeffrey Elementary School. That under this plan, the current Jeffrey Elementary School would be raised and then become athletic fields. And we would have construction in front of Polson for about 18 months that would be fenced off and safe, but it would potentially impact traffic as people would be interested in the status of the build, I'm sure. Site two. So as you can see, it is a little bit off to the west of our current campus setup. You can see Daniel Hand here and the athletic fields for right outside Daniel Hand and Polson. And so it is a little bit to the west. At this time, it has not been purchased. We've had considerable discussion and are moving towards that potential. It's obviously not as close to Polson in hand, and utilities will cost more than the current site. Benefits are it is a larger landmass than site one. We feel it still creates the campus feel, as it is close to Polson in hand. It does maintain the current Jeffrey School as an asset for the town or school or potential town use or community use, and does not disrupt the athletic fields, which we feel is a big piece, because we are cognizant of the impact of what happens there. So as Chairman Cowley mentioned, we have updated our enrollment projections. We're very fortunate that our demographer that worked on the enrollment projections actually lives in town and has some really firsthand experience. I'll tell you, in fact, when we're dealing with people on the project, we're finding many live in town and have that experience, and it's really beneficial to us as a school district. What we are required by the state is to do an 8-year projection. We actually received a 10-year projection. And the way this works is we do that based on the current setup of our schools. And so I'm just sharing 2 slides with you. There's a very lengthy presentation that was given to the board previously. It is on our website if you see this information tonight or are very interested. And as Chairman Cowley said, we kind of have hit, based on what we're being told, the bottom of our enrollment. We would expect that to rebound K through 3 next year. And then we see a nice steady increase over the next 7-8 years or so, and continuing on for a little while. I think this is reflective of a rebound in Connecticut economy, the housing market in Madison, and even prior, when we look back at 3-4 years before the pandemic, we saw an increased birth rate in town, which impacts obviously kindergarten enrollment. And so we are excited to see that return of our higher incoming kindergarten classrooms, which we expect this next coming year and beyond. We also received projections for 4 through 5, and because that's the focus of really K-5 is the focus of our presentation, that's all I'm sharing tonight. But as I said, all these slides and more are on the website. Also seeing that we're kind of at the bottom of the enrollment for grades 4 through 5, rebound kind of where we were pre-pandemic, and then continue to increase as those younger students move up to grades 4 through 5. And so again, we're excited to see that, and are able to project 2 elementary schools, pre-K to 5 and a K to 5 of roughly around 550 to 600 students each is where we would be at the time of opening. So one of the things we always looked at, and I know the board in town had presented this in previous project, is what's the cost of doing the referendum versus not doing the referendum? I think that's always an important question to ask. We do have older, well-maintained facilities, but I think we're at a point where a new school will make us much more efficient, allow us to close 2 other sites, and bring actually 3 schools into one. So it really gives us that potential to be more efficient going forward. We estimate, and again, this is an estimate based on current information we have, an $85 million cost to this full referendum. We estimate that $10,000 would be reimbursed from the state on that. So the cost of the project to Madison would be $75 million. We still, with our remaining buildings and other projects to do, would have $47 million of capital improvement projects going forward. And that's nothing different. That's a higher number than a usual capital improvement project plan that we've had in place. But every year we do capital improvement projects, kind of major maintenance on our schools. As I mentioned, it would result in 4 schools. This was the plan supported by the tri-boards. As I mentioned, it combines pre-K into elementary school, which is really the preferred method for pre-K, to have them connected with an elementary school. And then it would bring the average age of our schools after the new school is built to 35.5 years. Not doing the referendum would result in a $100 million CIP plan alone that we have. It would be on the 6 schools. The status of preschool and the preschool building in Madison is not addressed. So we would still have preschoolers in the portable classrooms here at town campus. We'd have no modernization really of our learning spaces. And then we would still end up with an average age of schools of about 50 years old. So you can see the difference bringing on one new school has on Madison schools. Just another way to show it, kind of in a comparison mode. Same information below, but the cost is pretty similar in terms of the two projects, but we would not have the benefit of a new school. Operating costs. So when the district closed Island School, there was a considerable amount of staffing savings that was realized. I think it's important to point out that at this point, we're not anticipating significant overall staffing savings when we look at our organization and as we start to get bigger through the enrollment that we shared. One example I've given frequently is currently our special ed director is the principal for our pre-K program. So those 45 students are serviced by our special ed director as the principal, and that works very well for our current setup. When the students would go into the new school, they would be part of that, a principal of that building of about 600 students. Principal of a building of 600 students, that we would typically have an assistant principal. So both of the elementary schools would have a principal and assistant principal. So we'd be taking 3 administrators and going to an organization with 4 administrators at that elementary level, because currently we have a principal of Brown, a principal of Ryerson, and a principal of Jeffrey. And so that's one change. There certainly is savings to be realized in custodial staffing and paraprofessionals. Again, we'd be more efficient, but we're not sure that that would be realized throughout. We feel we need at least as many teachers. And so at this point, we're not anticipating major staffing savings. Electrical, we for sure would save $30,000 to potentially over $100,000, depending on the school that is built. Transportation, we definitely would eliminate one school site. TCLC does not have significant transportation, but we eliminate one school site and a different time for drop off. So we feel we could be more efficient. Probably certainly some gas savings in there, and also some convenience of having the less sites and the less time to do that. But we're not sure that we would receive certainly a huge transportation savings on that. So this brings us to the exciting part. We are pleased with the attendance tonight, and we're hoping that we'd have questions. We have allotted about 3 to 5 minutes per speaker, and we would do our best, as we shared, to answer your question now. If we are unable to answer your question, we will do our best to get you an answer, and Wendy will take down your information. We'll get that back to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and return to the regular board setting.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cook. So the floor is open for questions or comments. If anybody, I think Wendy, you'll probably moderate those, right?
Yes, I'm looking right now to see if anyone has their hands raised. Okay, we do have one person, Charles Ledberger. I hope I'm saying that correctly. You can go ahead, Charles.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Lieberger of 37 Kimberly Lane. I moved to Madison in 1974 and sent 3 children through the school system. They all received fantastic educations, were challenged to the limit of their abilities. And I vote yes for every education budget each year. You can't spend enough money on education or spend money on anything better. I have a few comments on the renewal plan. I appreciate all the work that everyone put into it. But from school location standpoint, Madison's a very large town with 13 miles from the northern border to the surf club. Over the years, all the city planners have recognized the large town size and spread schools over 3 locations: Town Center, Green Hill Road, and up north on Route 79. It made sense back then. I think it makes sense now to keep the schools spread out around town to reduce traffic and transportation time for the kids. I don't think concentrating 90% of the students on Green Hill Road is a very good idea. We need to minimize the time our children spend in buses and personal cars. In the future, Madison has a lot more open space in the north, and future development in town and future children will be located up north. And Route 79 campus will be the most important. I think our schools are great now. Jeffrey is a great location. It blends into the neighborhood, and they're away from Green Hill Road, the drop-off points. Hand and Polson are on a fantastic property with a setting that everybody in town is proud of. Every day I commute to work on Green Hill Road, and I see that the students playing field hockey in the field and the ball field, and it would be awful to take that field and build it with a new building. The Green Hill neighbors, the Green Hill Road neighbors would be affected, I think, adversely in their property values. And Site 2 on Mungertown Road is a nice neighborhood, and I think that would also be adversely affected with congestion. Regarding the age of our schools, I don't think our schools are really that old. I personally have been in all the schools in town, and I think the conditions are actually very good. Most recently, my grandson actually attended Jeffrey, and I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time there. I think Jeffrey looks as nice as it does today as it did in the 1980s when my 3 kids went there. You know, I grew up in another state, and my high school building was a nice large building, and it's still serving as a school today. Actually, my father attended that same school almost 100 years ago. That town now has 8 schools. All those buildings were there in the 1950s and 1960s. They're all modernized with 100% air conditioning. So I don't know if age is a complete reason for tearing down schools. The situation has greatly changed because of COVID, and there's a mass migration of people into our town. I think we need a timeout of 2 or 3 years to know exactly where this will all end up and what we'll have to do in the future. Any cost building estimates that we did before last week are no longer valid. Things are going up so fast, building materials, for example, beyond normal inflation factors. In addition, if we keep the schools as they are and we do all the capital improvement programs, there's plenty of money coming through essa as part of the CARES Act that we might take more advantage of. So in summary, I think that we need to keep our schools spread out around town to minimize school commuting for the students. Mass migration of COVID is not over yet. We need to see where that's going. Yes, we need to spend a lot of money on school development, and it's important that we do so. But we need to spend it in exactly the correct way. And until everything is settled after COVID, I'm not sure we know exactly what that is. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Great point. Absolutely on point.
Yes, thank you, Charles. I'll just say one of the benefits we had talked about Site 2 would be the traffic piece, as you mentioned. I think it would be similar to Jeffrey in terms of where it's located next to the high school and middle school, but also onto a separate road in terms of the traffic piece. So and I will say too that is certainly something we've heard from before community members about all the schools being close together in one location, and under this plan only one school would be on the northern end of the town away from that. So that's certainly something that has gone into the consideration.
If I could, Katie, if I could slip in, and then, well, actually, Katie, you go first.
No, go ahead, Galen.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as the age of the buildings, it's not so much the age of the buildings themselves. So, for instance, Jeffrey has great bones. Ryerson is a little bit of a different story. It's the timing and sequence of capital improvements. So, just use Jeffrey as an example. We can't put in AC because the electrical capacity is not there. To bring the electricity up to standard to handle the AC, we basically have to put on a new roof. So it's like once you in for a penny, in for a pound. So the sequence is very important. The other aspect of that has to do with things like boilers. I mean, it's almost a stock example now, and I'll always defer to Bill McMinn, who does a fabulous job. These are really old boilers, and the urban legend here is that we've had to source some of the material from Jakarta. I don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of goes to the point that it's hard to get these aging parts. So it's not quite the building frame so much as is infrastructure that goes into it and the sequence of events. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, Galen, you stole my thunder. I was actually going to say almost exactly what you were going to say about the mechanicals and the sequencing. The only other 2 points that I wanted to make was the cost of waiting on those things, that there is an escalator. First of all, I should give kudos to Bill and the facilities committee who have done a great job at maintaining our buildings to date. But we, from my experience on the board, have been putting off doing any major mechanical upgrades to make this decision on a referendum and moving forward on our facilities. The other thing I think that wasn't necessarily mentioned, or maybe I missed it in the presentation, was that the state reimbursement rates are pretty substantial at the moment. And so waiting on that, there could be a potential increased cost the longer that we wait. So those were just a few points that I wanted to make based on things that I've heard so far.
Diane?
I thought that Charles made some excellent points about building materials, but I think with regard to the facilities project, we would not be actually purchasing materials now just yet. And I know the cost of materials has tripled currently, and that is projected to stay around for a little while before it comes back down. But this is the very beginning of the project, and so that may not actually impact the cost of the materials when we build the facilities, because there's so much more involved before we get to that point. And I know Bill or Dr. Cook can speak to that.
That was a great point. And our recent example of that is that the town of Mansfield recently went out for a bid, and they were pleased in terms of the response they got from builders. So I think builders are looking at it as, you're absolutely right, Diane, it's years out. And so they're looking at that as something that the building materials will come back down to where they are, or maybe slightly higher, but not at the rate they are right now. Okay.
Violet, do you?
Couple building materials. How long?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Could you get a little closer, speak up?
Sure.
There we go. Okay, it's better. Thank you.
Might be a Bill question. In terms of quotes for building work completion, how long do those quotes last? I understand right now, if quotes for building, and that's pretty much what he said. But so is it an open quote? There's some flexibility
Well, we're still having a really hard time hearing you. Maybe, do you want to type in your question maybe?
No, because it's too.
That's
much better.
Much better.
That's a good idea. My question was, in terms of building materials, building supplies, and a quote given by contractors, how long does that quote really last, or how long is it in effect? Because what is projected today may or may not, but the quote is what the quote is. So do they have the option to modify that? That's my first question. The other one is more for Peggy Lyons after you answer yours, Bill. And that my concern, and I think a lot of people in the community would have similar concern, is so now we decide to go ahead with these major projects. We already have quite a few, and I can name them as Island Academy and other potential structures that will now be available, and Ryerson would be one of them. So what do we do with now 3 buildings?
Well, we actually just established a facilities committee, and part of that is to develop a long-term facilities plan. So rather than making decisions on silos and individual buildings, which is what we have historically done, we need to have a grand plan of what we're going to do. Island, we've actually just gone out to RFP on, and we're hoping to get some proposals back, and the town will make a decision on that, hopefully the end of this year, or early next year. And then in terms of the other, any type of planning decisions are really driven by the school plan. It is the largest capital expense that the town has. And in order for us to do any kind of long-term planning, we have to have a footprint and a plan for the schools that the community accepts and votes on. And so we can't make any really major strategic decisions in this town long-term without figuring out the school system plan. So that's why I've continued to urge and support that the Board of Education move forward with providing the community with an acceptable plan so they can vote on it. We can make a decision, and then we can address all these other facility issues that we currently have. And so our facilities committee is going to start reviewing, and this is something we had not done historically. We'd made decisions without a plan for them about what would we do with Ryerson if the school plan does get a positive vote by the community. What do we do with the Ryerson property? What do we do with the Jeffrey property? Right now, hopefully we'll have a decision on Island by the end of this year. And then Academy is I will say, a whole nother thing that's been hanging around here for 15 years. So we'll figure it out. So I think our goal is to have a master plan. And the key linchpin in all of this is a school plan. And we need to have a vote on it.
I totally agree, and I'm in complete support of a master plan. I just don't think we've had one for Academy, so I think that's an answer or a question that we should be prepared for if we want to move forward.
I appreciate your point, but one thing I want to say is Academy is a $15 million question. The school system is a $100 million question. And I feel like let's get the $100 million, $80 million plan here answered, and then we can start making decisions about some of the other things that we have to make decisions on.
Great. Thank you. So Emily, did you have a question? And then maybe we should continue to get questions from the public. And Diane, we'll get you next round.
I just wanted to note there's 3 questions in the Q&A from members of the public. That's all.
Right.
That's
Thank you.
what I
So
was
we'll yeah, thank you. Okay.
All right, so I'll take the Q&A ones, and Wendy, if you could promote maybe Joan Walker. I know her hand has been up.
Yes.
Did I answer these? Great. So
Yeah.
the first question I see in the chat is, how do you propose to address the increase in school population between 2021 and 2025 when the schools will be open? Erica McMillan, thank you very much. Excellent question. As you saw, the line kind of does come up starting next school year. So we do feel we can handle that until the 2025 date, but it certainly is something we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. We do have some space at Brown currently if we ever had to make another grade restructuring, but we're hoping we would not have to before 2025. And then the next question was, what is the price difference of the project if the other land has to be purchased? Is the price tag that was presented for site 1 or site 2? So the price tag presented is for site 1. That's our currently owned land. If we pivoted to site 2, we would have a purchase price for the land. However, we wouldn't have a price tag for moving the athletic fields. And then a price tag for having the athletic fields down for 3 to 4 years. Believe it or not, a synthetic softball field, as is currently in place, is about $1 million. And then the other fields, moving them would also be about $1 million. So it's about a $2 million price tag to move those fields. And then the third question is, what is the typical cost overrun per projects within our state? And I'm going to turn that over to someone who's much more expert than me, Charles Warrington. Chuck, could you answer that in terms of what might typically happen with a project?
Certainly. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Chuck Warrington. I'm a director with Colliers Project Leaders right in Madison, and I've been involved with this program since late 2016, so I'm very intimate with all the changes throughout the years. But to answer that question, frankly, it comes down to, with Colliers, since I've been involved when we were SBS since 2013, we haven't had a project that's run over budget. And frankly, it comes down to the due diligence planning that we're doing right now in the district. We're looking at the sites. We just performed some preliminary geotechnical borings and some other studies. But with proper budgeting, doing the proper homework, and more importantly, good project management, budget management throughout the process. And there's a lot to the process. If it's done correctly with the right process, you can maintain it on budget. You're throughout design, you're testing, you stop it in different intervals to estimate the design to make sure it's being controlled within a certain construction budget, and then throughout construction. So we at Colliers, we have not experienced projects coming over budget. Similar projects like this in South Windsor, we've come in $1 million, $1.5 million under budget on the last 3 that they've built, as well as many other districts. So it all comes down to management of the budget, frankly.
Good. Thank you, Chuck. If I could intervene and maybe address Violet's question about how long the bids are good for.
Yes.
For materials. So
yeah, do you want me to answer that, Galen?
Well, yeah.
That was outstanding. Sure, absolutely. So when we go out to bid in our current schedule, we're anticipating if we do a referendum in that February timeframe that Dr. Cook has mentioned, probably going out to bid in late 2023. So it's a little bit of ways out. But when bids are submitted for the contracts, are typically responsible for holding those bids for a period of 90 days. They cannot change those. If for some reason the town delays awarding that project, then that kind of throws it into a bit of a question mark, depending on the market, depending on how much work is out there. Then you start getting into changes to the bid. We just recently had some challenges in the district due to some of the owner issues, but they have to hold them for 90 days.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Walker, you're up.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everyone on the Board of Ed, the facilities group, Bill McMinn, Colliers. You guys have been working on this for quite a few years, and you've continued to be able to update these documents and update the presentations to keep the public informed, and I really do appreciate that. So the first thing I'd like to state is that I believe that the second plan is probably a better plan from a traffic management, from a school campus standpoint, and from just an overall design standpoint. I think that by putting another building closer to Green Hill Road on what's currently the softball and the field hockey fields will bring about a bit more congestion. So that's my personal opinion, and having had kids gone through all of the school systems, and I think as a parent, I've seen every single school, and my child has been involved in every single school, either participating in current school activities or after school activities for every single elementary school and every single middle school and high school I've been a part of. And I have to say that I respectfully disagree with the first person who said that the schools are in good shape. They are in wonderful shape from a maintenance standpoint. Bill, you do a great job in keeping them up to par, but there's an overall mechanical need, there's an overall space need, and there's an overall need to look at how kids are now learning compared to when I was in school, and maybe people that were younger than me were in school. And I think we have to look to that and what is the best education for our future children. I have no stake in this game. My kids are out of the system, but I do have a stake in making sure that Madison's reputation in the schools that we have stay as high as they are, and we keep our teachers and we keep our administration, and we ensure that our children are getting the best education. And I believe that the second plan is the best fit for that. One of the questions I do have, though, is if the second plan does come into effect, would we be selling some of the property that we bought initially to make room for Plan 1? And that would be kind of up to the town. That's more for that. And what also, I like the idea that Jeffrey could be used as another facility if we felt that maybe a community center downtown wasn't at the academy wouldn't be appropriate or didn't go through, then maybe Jeffrey could be an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
I just wanted to say there's 2 questions in the Q&A
Oh,
for Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Diane.
The other
Yep.
thing I wanted to say was, for some people who are not familiar with Ryerson Elementary School or Jeffrey Elementary School, I wonder if Bill McMahon could just speak briefly about it, because we know that we are using so-called temporary trailers at Jeffrey that have been there for a lot longer than temporary, and about, the Ryerson, how it has very unique characteristics to the building, that if it was to be brought up to current code, the significant cost that would cost us.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Bill. Just wanted to thank Ms. Walker for the comments and the pieces about the different site. I think that's very well taken, and we appreciate that. I know in terms of the land, I think we, as a town, speaking for the town, I know they value the land closest to schools very, very much. So I don't know that they would necessarily sell that off, but I know that they would consider all options. Bill, do you want to?
Sure. I'll start with the Jeffrey School. The Jeffrey School was originally started in the 50s. We did some additions in the 60s, and then the final edition, we did some in the 80s, and the final edition we did in 2000 when we added the modulars. The original boiler's in place. In 89, we added a second boiler, so it's substantially old. Both the boilers, one's in the 50s and one's in the 80s. The roof is significantly old. It has a pitch to it, so it's in decent shape and it doesn't have any problems, but it needs to be replaced. Some of the windows are original. The building definitely has been taken care of. The Board of Education supports, a very aggressive maintenance program, and we take care of the building. But the infrastructure, the original electricity, there's no air conditioning. So increasing air conditioning, increasing ventilation for the school, it's a significant amount of money and it's a big deal. Ryerson, different. It was built in the 60s and is the original building with no additions or modifications, other than we did replace the boiler. The boiler's there. So it does have a nice set of boilers. They're only approximately 10 years old and they work very well, but the building is unique. It's on multi-levels. We have looked at doing some modifications and renovations of Ryerson a few times. The problem is it's such multiple levels. To make it all one level would be very difficult, if not practical. So the schools are maintained. We have very dedicated, employees that are taking care of the schools, but to replace ventilation, heating and air conditioning for both Jeffrey and Ryerson is replacing the original electrical services, and then installing heating and air conditioning to today's standards would be significant. Hope I answered your question in a general way. Happy to answer more detailed questions, but that's the overall. They're older buildings. The infrastructure that you don't see, the electrical, the heating and air conditioning, the ventilation, the roofing, those are all in need of repair. Will they fail next week? Will they fail next year? No, but they will fail within some reasonable time. I'd say in the next 5 to 10 years if we don't do something.
Thanks, Bill. Wendy has reminded me of kind of the timing of when questions have come forward. So we have Gus Horvath, 2, and then the Q&A, and I see another one from the audience. So Gus, the floor is yours.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
You hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. I wear earphones because I'm auditorially not with everybody on this. The first person who spoke talked about the geography of town, and before I get to the specifics of that, it brings up the question that when you're in a project like this, you should try to anticipate as many questions as you possibly can and have the answers in your back pocket. Whether you have to pull them out or not is going to depend on whether the question is asked. But you're always better off to be prepared to answer the question. And the specific issue was concentrating the schools at the southern part of town and only leaving one school up in the North Madison area, and questioning about whether build out would be affecting that in a northern part of the town, north of Route 80. The town of Madison has almost 40% open space, the entire town. North of Route 80 is about 80 or 85% open space. There's thousands and thousands of acres owned by the New Haven Water Authority. And most of the Class 3 land that could be buildable has been purchased from the Water Authority by the Madison Land Trust. There is also extensive area up there owned by the Madison Rod and Gun Club. They sold many years ago a conservancy easement on their property to raise money, and that can't be built on. And there is very little state land up there. Most of the state land is south of Route 80, but between Hammonasset State Park, State Forest, the town-owned land. So all told, we have very, very buildable land north of the Route 80. I did a build-out study about 20 years ago. And I've suggested to the town planner several times that we should do another build-out study to confirm that type of thing. And that is the type of thing I'm talking about, is you should anticipate the questions you're going to get. And the idea of the purchase of the property on Mungertown Road, that's very interesting because the original owner of that property is the one that negotiated the lease for the fields that are between the two driveways back in the 1970s. And I was appointed to my first school building committee in December of 1969 and have served on 4 other building committees for the schools and 3 or 4 for the town. So I know what this process is all involved. And my institutional knowledge has told me anticipate, anticipate, anticipate. And if you never have to answer any of the questions that are asked on the things you anticipated, consider yourself lucky. Thank you. And if there's anything I can do from a background or a historical perspective that you think might help you, let me know. I'm 91 years old and I sit in front of my computer all day and I'm looking for things to do. I'm tired of doing puzzles on my dining room table.
We always love your input, Gus. You're a wealth of knowledge.
And don't believe anything Katie Stein tells you about me because it's all true.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Gus.
Okay, thank you. And good luck on your project.
Well, we'll come back to you on this for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gus. So the 2 questions that have been in the chat the longest. The first question was from Matt Gordon. Can you speak to the methodology of the projections for student growth? How confident can we be with these assumptions? And so we have utilized an expert in the field. They look at many different methodologies like birth rate, as I mentioned, survival rate, which is how many students or what percentage of students enter kindergarten that are born in town. Typically in Madison, that is increases, so more students move in before they enter kindergarten, and it is accepted by the state. I think really expert in the field. Happy to go over that with you. It is on the website, and so there's much more detailed methodology explained on there you're interested, or shoot me an email. I'm happy to follow up with you in more detail. And then Steve Penn asked, in the renovation plans for the schools, are there any new spaces in terms of labs, workshops, or opportunities for 21st century learning? In the renovation plans, I'm going to assume you're talking about the CIP plan, and then not the actually, no, you probably are talking about maybe at the higher grades. And so I'll turn that over to Bill McMinn to speak to Polson and Brown.
Well, I didn't really understand. Can you clarify, do we have stuff in the CIP for Polson and Brown?
Yeah, that's where I'm confused. Stephen, are you still on the meeting? Yes. Would you be willing to raise your hand if you're willing to be promoted? If not, maybe if you could chat it, type another question. We're just not sure if it's the renovations plans you're talking about for Brown and Polson, or are you referring to the CIP plan? Oh, great. Thank you, Stephen.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yep. Yes. Steve Penn, Winding Road, Madison. No, I'm referring to the overall building plan. You know, as we move forward, I look to, are we trying to generate new spaces other than traditional classrooms, and trying to build our schools to be more in alignment with what we anticipate the future is asking of our students? So entrepreneurship, maker spaces, labs, workshops. We have a broad range of students with a variety of interests, and I'm looking to see if there's some vision going ahead beyond just projections of number of students about what learning will look like for kids going into the future.
So I can talk about the Polson renovations and that we have in our CIP, and there's only one space that we've looked at in the future for renovating for such things, and that would be the old gym, converting that into a learning space. We've looked at that and had some schematic plans, and it is in our capital plan. It's pretty far out. That's the only space I can think of. Of course, the new school that we're proposing would have that, and the spaces what we're looking at to renovate at Brown School, I think would address some of that as well.
Yeah, I think any part of the project doesn't preclude that from happening. Certainly there are, wealth of opportunities currently at Brown and Polson for that to occur. The project is really meant to, address the K-5 level through the new project, and then build those schools up with air conditioning and electricity to be able to be ready for the next set of projects. It wouldn't be at that large of a scope.
And Dr. Cook, one of the things I heard you mention yesterday was a commitment to some outdoor space up at Brown School when it becomes K-5.
Yes, I mean it's a conversation Bill and I have had with principals, and certainly during this time when we've been utilizing outdoor space, pretty much throughout the entire school year, we would look to continue that. Maybe not as much in the very cold months, but utilize an outdoor classroom at Brown to give Brown something a little bit unique to the school as well. There's so much space around the school. It'd be great to utilize that. And we've heard from many families about how students have benefited from being outside much more this year.
One of the other areas I know that we've been spending some funds on is redesigning the classrooms with furniture, upgrading the furniture for this new kind of way they learn. I know the furniture has changed, and we talk about that, and we've been funding that. I know it's never enough, but I know that we did it at Polson, and I know that we've upgraded some of the furniture at the elementary schools as well to try to address those issues.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I think the lab space at Polson that was renovated a couple years ago has been a good success. And I think, correct me,
And I know that we spent significant money at one of the buildings at the high school.
yeah,
One of the spaces at the high school, we renovated the high school classroom. It's our newest building, but we still try to make decisions and upgrade the school to meet today's standards. So maybe never as much as we'd like to, but we spent significant dollars at the high school last summer. It's a little crazy. Maybe it was the summer before, renovating a room to make it much more meet today's standards. I know that was very successful.
right. Diane?
I wanted to say two things. The first is with regards to the furniture, we have been updating, as Bill said, but we did put that on hold during the pandemic because of the spacing issues that we needed. And so we did, as a board, place that whole project on hold. And that will be coming, I'm sure, back to us now that restrictions are being changed and lifted. And the second thing I want to say is there's another question in the Q&A.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I believe the next person, Wendy, waiting was Christina Morris.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Christina.
Hi there. I want to thank everybody for working so hard on all this. I spent some time in some of the working group meetings, and it was such a great thing to have and listen to all the bipartisan just problem solving within the Board of Ed. So I want to thank you all for that. One of the things that among all the other things, as I was thinking of, is some of the health and safety issues. Not to alarm anyone, but security is definitely an issue for our schools. And as we look at our elementary schools, how would I say this? We need to still be able to close doors and close windows and still have the students be able to have a comfortable learning environment. And without some of the physical capacities to do that, like air conditioning or things like that, you go to a lot of the schools and doors are open or propped open and fans. It's things like that. And our SRO officers, our whole police are so fantastic, and that's great. But that still kind of ties in with the physical capabilities of our schools. It's not just about, do these kids need to be, held in a pristine condition? We're in a different environment now where perhaps there's also another level of security that we need to think of. And again, our police and our SRO officers are fantastic. But I think that the facilities could aid in that with upgrades. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the results of the tri-board and the public forums that we held indicated that the criteria that we used to address the possibility of new schools were security, location, 21st century learning environment, the cost benefit value for taxes, public use, created as a town asset, and then the school size. So those were the 7 criteria that we used to rank the options that resulted. And security was obviously right up there.
Yes, thank you, Christina. And as as mentioned, security is a big piece of a new building with, especially with AC. You take away the need to prop doors open or keep windows open. So that's really important. So thank you for bringing that point forward. There's another question, and Wendy, if you could promote Jude Heston. So Paul Wang asked for Site 1, is there sufficient and safe outdoor play space for the elementary students? Also, will there be adequate parking for evening events if there are simultaneous events at Han Polson in a new elementary school? Great question for sure. In terms of the outdoor spaces and where they were located at the school, when we did the test fit for the site, they were on backside of the school, certainly away from the road, and that did not seem to be a concern. I think in terms of parking for evening events, that would probably be something we'd have to really schedule with an eye towards that. I could see that being a problem in terms of the parking if all three schools were trying to hold something simultaneously, and certainly with traffic flow, even more so than parking, because new parking spaces would come on board. But certainly if the school communities were trying to all get to those three sites at the same time, that would be problematic. All right. Jude.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jude Hessian Friedman, and some of you know me. I've been on the Board of Finance for 4 years now. And Chairman Galen and I both served on the Tri-Board Committee. And Galen, thank you very much for referring to the 7 criteria that we spent all of that time looking at. For those of you who are in the audience listening tonight, the Tri-Board consisted of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, Board of Finance. We had also, Charles Warrington was there on a weekly basis. We met every week for many months. We held several public forums, both up north and down south, for parents to come and express their issues. And we also had many people come. We asked them to come before the Tri-Board, people who had interest holders in these issues, such as realtors in town. That's just a beginning of the people that we had come before us. So I wanted to just quickly address some of the issues that Charles brought up initially and some other issues that came up. I want to echo some of the sentiments that it's not just the outside appearance of buildings that we're concerned about here when we talk about the age of the buildings. As Christina just mentioned, safety is a huge issue. For Jeffrey, the fact that you have all of those large windows accessible from the drop-off circle, as well as from the parking lot. In today's age, after school shootings, that is a huge negative as far as, is your school safe against some intrusions, such as someone wanting to come in and do damage and make harm. So just the very structure of the building itself. Both Jeffrey and Ryerson, when we talk about getting air conditioning, it's not because that's a nice thing. It's not because that's a want. Wouldn't it be great if our kids weren't sweating in May and June in school? You can hear about, we've had some of these kids from Ryerson talk at some of our meetings that it's just horrible, their stories. But it's like, well, we went through that when we were kids, they can too. But it's not about comfort. It's about security, because you have those issues. You open up windows, you prop open doors just to get air circulating in there. And then you also have health issues because there's a quality of air issue going on. So these are not, I don't want people to think that these are wants. These are safety issues. The parents that came to our public forums were very interested in it. The realtors who spoke were very clear also that when they have people come, these schools, as they tour these schools, they hear about this great Madison public education system, but they tour these schools, and these schools, especially the elementary schools and middle schools, are a huge turnoff to people coming to the town. I also had a child who went through the school system. He's graduated. I don't have a dog in this fight, as you might say, but I do insofar as I want to maintain and even improve the value of the educational system in Madison, because I think it's good for the town. And let's face it, it's good for our property values. Everybody's a win-win when we have good schools in town. So the other issues I wanted to address, in addition to the safety issues, is that today's teaching curriculum it's just different. And I had to learn about this. You know, I'm almost 62. When I went to school, as many people did, our desks were in a row. The nuns actually made us line up our corners to make sure that our rows were straight. And that's how we learned. Today's learning is not like that. The curriculum that these wonderful teachers that we have that are trying to teach our children are not served by that sort of a schoolroom environment. The school and room environment is very different, and these schools that were built in the 50s and 60s that were geared towards the desks in a row teaching environment really cause an impediment to our teachers being able to teach the curriculum that they need to teach for the students' best effectuation of learning. So that is a huge part of it, and that was part of our 7 criteria that Galen mentioned. There are many things about these schools that it would have been wonderful to have addressed before. I really hope that we can go forward and address them now. As I've heard it said by others, every year that we wait, the costs of these projects continue to go up. I'm sure if you looked back at the cost even of the referendum that failed in 2017, I think it was, you'd be shocked at how much it would cost today to build the same thing that we were looking at back then. Every year that goes by, it's just adding more to what we should need to be spending for our children's safety, for their health, and for maximizing the curriculum, this wonderful curriculum that this Board of Education has come up with, and these great teachers who are committed to delivering that curriculum at the highest level possible. So those are just a couple of my comments that I wanted to say today. And I thank you all on the Board of Education and Superintendent for continuing this process after this entire hiatus because of COVID. And I want to thank you for all the work that you've done during this COVID year. But I, just thank you very much for your dedication, and hopefully we can get moving on some sort of a referendum, which may be more expensive than just $100 million capital maintenance plan. But the other question that I always had is that after we put in $100 million in capital maintenance in 10 years, we have buildings that are just 10 years older. What does capital maintenance look like for the next 10 years? So to spend a little more now to rectify some of these issues, to actually rectify a lot of these issues, to address a lot of the issues, really is the cost-conscious, effective way to deal with this.
Great. Jude, thank you so much. Those are great points.
Okay. We had one more questions, more of a statement to talk about how we're going to be proactive, approach our far-reaching information campaign in terms of this project. How are we going to share the project with the public? And so the board has talked quite a bit about holding many open forums, making sure information is accurate out there, working with our PTOs who've been so supportive of the project and our school communities. And one of the reasons why we have delayed the project is to be able to have time to be able to go out and have live meetings. And so, that's going to be part of the discussion, I think, when the board talks about a time frame for the referendum. So thank you for that. Zoe, you received questions. Roos, you received questions previously. Wendy, could you promote? Hi, great.
I'm here.
Good
evening, everybody.
Either if they've been repeated or asked similar, and if there's anything remaining still.
No, I went down the list. Unfortunately, the public asked a lot of good questions tonight, so all of the ones that were emailed in have been answered on camera tonight.
Oh, great. Thank you, Zoe. Okay. Appreciate that. All right, back to you, Chairman Kelly. I did not see anything in Q&A.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Thank you, everyone. It's a reopening, a first step. And all I can say is that we need the input, and we've, continue to consider most of these points. And we'll be very public about it. So thank you to everybody who showed up and asked questions. At this point, next on the agenda would be a discussion on the referendum date. And this is just a board discussion, not dispositive. We can quickly outline some of the pros and cons. We don't have much in the way of a business agenda tonight, but we do have items we need to consider. So maybe if we could spend five or 6 minutes at most discussing the pros and cons of different dates. And with that, I will open up to anybody who would like to ask a question or make a statement.
I'm happy to start.
Go ahead. Go for it.
After you, Happy, go ahead.
I would just say, and I have said this before, I think November is way too soon to do this referendum. I think we don't have as much information as we need, especially with a quiet period. I want to make sure, especially given some of the comments that we got and anticipating people's questions and having all of the answers, that we have the time to lock all of our answers in and really do our due diligence, because many of us lived through a failed referendum once. And we don't want to necessarily have that happen again and just delay things even more. So I would advocate for the latest possible referendum date that we could have personally. I think that so that we have as much possible time to get all of our information.
Thank you.
In December, I don't think anyone wants to go vote on anything. I think people want to celebrate holidays, wrap up things that are happening. There's a lot of moving parts. February, March sounds like an ideal time period.
Diane?
I'd just like to point out that we get a lot of snow in February, so we might want to consider pushing it a little bit further towards the spring.
Okay, thank you. And Emily, do you have
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said. And I just wanted to confirm that whether the referendum is in November or March, Dr. Cook, the timeline for construction, maybe this is for Mr. McMinn, is still an opening of September 2025, right? So if the referendum, if we go a little bit later in the year, so say March, to avoid snowstorms, we still have, that seems to me like the best option, because we have the most time to educate the public and do outreach and information sessions, and it doesn't push our timeline back any further. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And great. Thank you, Emily. And Katie, did you?
Yeah, I'm going to be the outlier here. I've been on the board dealing with you, and this issue predates both of us.
Yeah.
I've been on the board 6 years. You've been on the board 6 years. This is a 7-year issue. It's time. The schools deserve it. Our students deserve it. we know, we've studied, we've addressed, we've forumed, we have a lot more education to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy to talk from now until December, but my vote is for December. It's time. The longer we wait, the more likelihood that we will have an issue like a roof or a boiler or something else that goes wrong that tips the scales or changes the objectives. So I'm just not sure. To me, I get it, it's cold in December. I get that there are holidays at the end of December, but there are 31 days in the month. And to me, our community deserves an answer. We've heard from our first selectman, and we heard it loud and clear on the tri-board that a lot of things hinge on this. And the longer this board waits, the longer other decisions in our town that are meaningful also have to wait.
Yep. Yeah. It's, for the record, it's March of 22, not of 23. God help us. Okay. So okay, I'm just teasing you about that. All right. All right. Thank you. All good points. Would anybody else like to comment or contribute? All right. Hearing none, thank you very much. Well, we have next on the agenda is Dr. Cook, who would like to address the status of our ESSER grants.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to thank Charles Warrington for joining us, Bill McMinn for joining us and their input, and also our first select woman, Peggy Lyons. Thank you very much for joining us. It was great to have you with us tonight. We look forward to further opportunities to have these discussions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll buy out and I'll enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy.
All right, so the ESSER grants, we presented this information last meeting. We have not made any changes. I'd ask, I know Stacy's with us. I know she might have been having some technical difficulties. I don't know if Gail is going to be the one to share the documents with us.
So Stacy communicated with me and she should be all set, but I'm prepared in the event that she has another glitch.
Wendy, can you bring Stacy forward?
All set.
Great, thank you. And also Zoe, we can let Zoe go. Thank you, Zoe, for fielding the email box and helping us out tonight. Okay, thank you, Stacy. So as shared previously, the ESSER funds were confirmed. We have the grant application. The American Rescue Plan is the one we're expecting the application and final information Thursday. We reviewed this with the Finance Committee. I do not expect that number to change, but you know, until Thursday, you know, we will continue to watch that. But we've been, as recently as today, we received confirmation that that's the number for Madison. But until we actually have the grant application in our hands, we will continue to watch that very closely. As you can see, we have addressed some of the concerns with the number of FTE. We've decreased that to 6, 2 of which is the elementary classroom teachers for Jeffrey and Ryerson. These are positions that if we did not have these grants available to us, we do think we would have to find money elsewhere or go back to the Board of Finance for funding for those teachers because of the increased enrollment that we were seeing at those 2 schools. But continuing beyond one, the first year would be the social workers and the interventionists in terms of FTEs. We're looking at funding those for the 3 years. You know, and our schools are very excited to receive those supports. The substitute teacher line item was a line item that came out of our budget and was placed into the grant, as well as some of the money for the interactive boards, which you know, we're excited to bring on as well. Technology database security initiatives are somewhat, you know, are COVID related in terms of the security initiatives. And our work there, our student database will certainly help our student results by giving information into teachers' hands. And then finally, the ESS said Polson is a increase of the current program by 1 staff member. It's not an FTE, it's a program, a 12-month program. And so to provide student supports, the current program at Polson is full. And so that would increase our capacity there to the same level as the high school. So as I shared, we shared this at finance, so I'm not sure if the finance committee members want to share anything, or if we're ready. We are asking the board to basically approve the information, knowing that it will change on a almost yearly basis. We know these numbers will change based on who's hired and who's staffing the positions, and then potentially how things are going. We again have shared, we could find out in year 3 that one of the interventionists may not be needed, and we would potentially take that money and address a different need at that time.
I have a question. Currently, we have how many school psychologists and how many social workers?
We have 4 social workers currently. This would bring us to 1 social worker per building. And then school psychologists, we have, I don't know if Liz is with us tonight. I believe we had 1 for each building already, 6 school psychologists from last discussion.
And are these social workers there for which buildings are these that we don't have?
Currently, Brown and Polson split a social worker, as well as the elementary school. So make sure we'd have 1 at each building.
And the interventionist, is that language arts or is that math?
Language arts. And what that would do for both those schools is they would have 2. So we'd have a K-1, most likely in a 2 and 3, but really looking at caseloads, it may shift at those buildings.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. I do, this makes sense to me. I do wish that the use of these funds, and I've said this before, I wish they were used at least to some extent for teacher support and professional learning. And I know when we've had this conversation before, Dr. Cook, you mentioned that we would hear about plans for professional learning and other funds that might be shifting as a result and how that might be enhanced. And I think it would be helpful to hear that soon.
Sure.
I have a question about the grants and the funds. When you find out the amount that we get and then you have it itemized out like this, and there's every dollar is accounted for, do these have to then be approved? Like, is there someone overseeing from like the state of Connecticut or whatever to say that these fall into the categories that they approve of? Is that how it works?
Absolutely, yes. So our first step in the process was there was a state consultant through CAPS that came out, Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, but it was working closely with the State Department of Ed to come out to us, and they met with Gail Dowling-Hench and myself and reviewed the grant, what we intended to do. We will have another meeting based on ESSER 3, the ARP grant, but they let us know we were right on pace with on path with what the grant is available for, and similar to other towns. And so they had also gone to districts that were receiving 80 million and districts that were receiving slightly less than us. But you know, in terms of where we're at, you know, everything made sense to them where we were spending the money, and they felt it would be approved. But there is that potential that we could come back to you and say the substitute teacher line was not approved, and so we, have to make a plan, another plan on how to expend that funds and how to cover the substitute teacher line. I do not think that's the case based on how wide open some of the grant categories were.
I know I had heard from, I saw a quote from the superintendent from Old Lyme, who said that they were not intending to use any of their grant money for FTEs because that eventually will have to be covered by the Board of Ed budget when the funds eventually run out. But I know that from the other meeting, the committee meeting, you were saying that the social workers and the interventionists, those are 1-year contracts.
Yeah.
And then the teachers would obviously, the first year, that's also a 1 year. And you said that there could be some offset with possible retirements. But if they, depending upon, of course, of enrollment, the need for the teachers, like that's an entirely different issue in my eyes. I mean, if you have the need, then that just becomes a Board of Ed budget issue and not really a grant issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've said it very well that we could be looking at enrollment, and that would be a clear presentation of the board for year 2. Okay, so here's where we stand. We feel we need to continue these teachers based on enrollment and expected kindergarten enrollment. In terms of the social workers and interventionists, so one of the first things we really did is we picked up where the needs we felt were, and so there could be a potential at the end of the 3 years that we say, here's the results of having 2 interventionists at Jeffrey. We would like that to continue, and then that's a board decision in terms of that. But all the positions, as all of our new hires were 1-year contracts that at the end of the time, as we did this year, we could take action you could take action as a board to discontinue that contract for several reasons. Some of which be no longer the need for those positions or the grant funds, running out.
So if after the 3 years, then the interventionists who are technically teachers, they would not automatically be in the union and part of that contractual agreement we have with the teachers union. This is completely separate. Is that what you're saying?
No, all of our teachers. So we will hire 15 teachers this summer, and we've hired some already. They all have a 1-year contract. They're all part of the teachers union, whether they're paid out of a grant. We have some paid out of a grant right now. So the special ed IDA grant pays several of our teachers. So they are paid out of that grant, and they are on a contract. What would happen with these teachers after 3 years, they would have 3 years of seniority. So they may have more seniority over somebody we hire in the year 2023, 24. And so they may stay with the district, but the new hire from that year may not. But every year we have some level of attrition. A district our size, we would have elementary retirements. We may have an elementary teacher move to the middle school. We may have someone take a leave of absence. So there's always that potential that we'd be able to continue that person's job.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments about the ESSA grants? All right. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Hearing no other questions, can I get a motion to approve the submission of the ESSA grants with staffing as proposed?
So moved.
Okay. Thank you, Katie.
Second, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Is there any further discussion on this issue? All right.
I just had a question.
Sure, of course.
Would we normally make a motion to add it to as like an action item to vote on at the end of the meeting, or do we just do it now?
Well, I'll turn that over to Greg, Dr. DeSantis.
It's listed with possible action. It can happen now.
Okay, good. Thank you for bailing me out, Greg. But good question, Diane. All right, is there any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. We still have a formal agenda for the school community session and any public participation, if anybody's still around. I think we had a great turnout, several excellent comments. But if anybody in the public would like to speak up at this time, please feel free to submit a question or check with Wendy. Wait a
We have
minute.
no hands raised at the moment.
All right, thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Any other board member comments? Because tonight's a public, oh, go ahead, Diane, thanks.
I just would like to put out there that perhaps in the future, a presentation with question and answer might be held separate from the Board of Ed general meeting so that we can get our business done, like that can go on and it won't be like a 7-hour.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a pilot program for the workshop model. And so we really condensed the agenda, put it towards the end. But yeah, I think in the future, we'll learn as we go along and maybe make it more of a separate thing. You know?
So Diana, I think that's a great point though. When we talked at our retreat about the workshop model, is this, Greg, typically what it looks like other than being remote? Is this the kind of exchange of ideas that the workshop model is intended to provide? And it might be helpful for the public to know that we might be moving towards a workshop model every other week and having a formal business meeting once a month, and having more of an exchange of ideas monthly on specific topics.
Along those lines, it might be helpful for our second attempt at this to be as uncluttered as possible and see what that's like as compared to a night like tonight where there's a lot on the agenda. I can think of a couple things to cut, Galen. I'll talk to you about it Thursday.
Yeah, okay, good, thanks.
I just feel like, you know, if it was a public format with Q&A and everything, I mean, I know a lot of things got answered and everything, but I wouldn't want it to seem like, well, we have to move on now because we have business to take care of. Like, I feel like when we do a public thing that it would be, I don't know, as much time as they need, almost, not quite, but.
Yeah, it takes as long as it takes, in other words. Yeah, yeah, good. All right, thank you. All right, in service of a condensed agenda, we're largely bypassing committee reports. With the exception of policy, we do have some second readings on board. So Happy, would you like to?
Or I was wondering why I got so lucky. So the policy committee met tonight. We had a follow-up discussion of 3 policies this evening. There are 2 policies for second reading in your packet, but the second one actually, because it relates to bylaw 9540.10, which is public participation at board meetings, and there were some answers from our council. So those comments were circulated prior to the meeting, and the administration is going to take them back and incorporate them back into the policy. So I suspect it's going back to committee for that to happen, and we'll come back to you. Greg, if I got that wrong, you can correct me at some future date. We also discussed policy 2260, which is the administrative responsibility for student placement. That policy is going to stand as, but basically be renumbered to fall within the student section of the Board of Ed policies. And then also the student dress policy. We did have some student presentations and comments on this, and those were reviewed with Mrs. Hart, Mr. Salutary, and also Board of Ed members. And they also reviewed the policy within the handbook and feel that the policies are fairly equitable in terms of gender, but we're making the recommendations that teacher and administrator training occur to help kind of fairly enforce the policies, and also include the dress code in the Polson handbook. And then the last thing we discussed tonight was the next policy series, which is the 3000s, and determined which of the 22 policies within that we would review first. Our next meeting is June 22nd, and that's the end of report.
Thank you. Happy. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns? Anything to discuss about the policy committee?
No questions or concerns. Just one note that you may want to delay the third reading by one meeting if you want the policy committee to see it again before it goes back to the board on the 22nd.
Doesn't it go back to us for committee and then come back out?
But because of the timing of this, you're not going to meet again before the third reading, which would be on the 8th, I think, or whatever the date is.
All right.
So,
Fine. I can't really comprehend that all right now, but we can talk about it some other time. It's fine.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 11th, 2021 Board of Education meeting? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Tom. Second. Thank you, Violet. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Diane abstains. Thank you. Motion carries. 8-0, 1 abstention. Please feel free to bring up any future agenda items. There are meetings and dates of importance in your packet, and go right ahead. Diane?
Katie had her hand up first.
Yeah, well, thanks. All right, thanks, Katie.
I'm going to beat the same drum and hope that meeting in person. I appreciate getting more information this week about the potential of meeting in person and all of the safety and health that is being taken into consideration for that. I know the Board of Selectmen met yesterday in person, so I'm a little jealous that we weren't able to convene in person tonight, but I hope that that will happen soon.
Yeah, thank you. It was Dr. Cook and I were there last night, and I have to say it was really nice to be in person, and it felt like information flowed. Of course, it's good to see people. So yeah, I'm with you on that. And
I just had a quick comment regarding the dates of importance. I had on my calendar, and I think it's on the other calendar, that on June 1st, there was a facilities committee to follow the curriculum and student development, but it's not listed here. And also on June 22nd, it has finance at 5:30 and policy at 6. But on the calendar, on the Board of Ed calendar, it was 5:30 and 6:30, like how it usually is. So I just wanted to clarify that if anyone could help me out.
How about if we double check that and get back to everybody on the board afterwards? Okay. I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank everybody from the public. I'd like to thank Peggy Lyons, all the attendees, Colliers, Bill McMahon. Thank you for your patience. I think it was a good workshop and lots of really good points. So with that, need a motion to adjourn.
No move.
Diane, second, anybody? All right, thank you, Katie. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No holdouts? Thank you. All right, thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Right.
Motion adjourned.